This is Maddie Wood. Maddie's a community and national leader with Amnesty International. She has been working on the tactics team leading her region in the mobilisations of Amnesty's Indigenous Youth Justice campaign. Community is everything. Maddie also convenes the Gold Coast Charter and is a member of the Queensland Northern New South Wales Branch Committee. Maddie is an incredibly passionate and about raising awareness on the issues of Indigenous youth justice and fostering positive change in her community and on a national level. She has been working alongside Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal community leaders, members of Parliament and organisations, forging lasting partnerships and alliances and cultivating community strength. Thank you, Maddie.
Thank you everyone for having me here. I would like to start by paying my respects to the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Gudinjinbarra country, pardon me. I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge that this land always was and always will be Aboriginal land. I'm going to start a little bit today. I did have a bunch of other slideshows that contain things like statistics and a little bit more information about what Amnesty has been researching, but over the course of the last 2 days, all of my fellow speakers have pretty much touched on all of that. So I've done a little bit of scrapping to my presentation, and I'm going to just kind of casually talk a little bit about what Amnesty International is and what we're doing in the Indigenous rights sphere. And some of the successes that we've had in the campaign as well. So Amnesty International is a global movement of people from all walks of life that campaign for the rights of all people. In Australia alone, Amnesty International has 220 active grassroots groups and over 500,000 committed and engaged supporters. Because of this, Amnesty has a strong local community presence, particularly in the areas where we have key groups. These groups typically meet at least once a month to work on focus campaigns, and at the moment we've got over 80 of those 200 groups working on community is everything. So because of this, Amnesty really is a powerful mass movement of people who are undertaking advocacy and mobilising to put pressure on governments and influencers to protect the human rights violations that are happening in the world today. So we work on everything from refugee rights to marriage equality to Indigenous rights. And obviously today my focus will be on Indigenous rights. So up here we've got our team. So we've got Belle, who's here today, and Bettina King was here, and Tammy and Rodney as well leading the team. So we've got 3 Aboriginal people who are steering the team, and then we've got Belle, and then we've also got a tactics team network. So there's, I think, 5 or 6 of us on that from all different states and territories across Australia. And then in addition to this, we have identified some key activists, so volunteers throughout the whole of the nation that are also focusing on community is everything as a priority campaign. So again, I won't go into this too much because we have already kind of touched over it over the course of the last couple of days, but just understanding the issues that are happening a little bit. So Community is Everything is the name of our Indigenous rights campaign, and the goal is to end the overrepresentation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids in prison within a generation, so within 25 years. We're calling on the government to support more Indigenous-led solutions for kids and change laws for fairer youth justice system. So in June 2015, Amnesty launched this Indigenous rights campaign. It came off the back of over 5 years of research, engagement and consultation with Indigenous and broader communities. Community is Everything addresses that Indigenous kids are being locked up at a disproportionate rate, and it campaigns to end the overrepresentation of Indigenous kids in the justice system. justice system. This is Amnesty's longest running priority campaign. So as a member of the Queensland Northern New South Wales Branch Committee, we've also made it our 2020 vision that this is our #1 priority campaign. So it's already taken precedence over the last 4 years and will continue to do so as well. So a little bit more about that's gone all skew. Looks better on my page. So what we're trying to do with community is everything. So make it local, support Indigenous community-led solutions, make it fair, change the laws to comply with the rights of the child, make it work, prevention, not detention, and make it happen. A national plan looking at a holistic health solution. Amnesty can use our platform to help carry the voices of Aboriginal people. Thank you very much. Cool, so what have we been doing so far? Amnesty has been partnering with Indigenous communities, coalitions and organisations, providing need for change through research reports, influencing decision makers by lobbying and submissions, and making it heard through activism throughout Australia. So that's the foundation of the Community is Everything campaign. With research and plans developed under the guidance of Indigenous community members throughout the course. Okay. Example of this, and we wanted to give some kudos today to the Change the Record Coalition. So we've got here First Peoples Disability Network, Family Violence Prevention and Legal Services, and below that you can see all of the member services there. So we're working with Indigenous peak organisations and other NGOs as part of Change the Record Coalition to close the justice gap. The CTR Coalition has 2 Aboriginal co-chairs, who are part of the Aboriginal community-controlled organisations at the moment. So that's Damien and Antoinette for the First Peoples Disability and Family Violence Prevention Legal Services, and many other members, including National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Legal Service, National Congress of the Australian People, and Amnesty International. So from that coalition, there have been 4 very important documents that have been created. So there was a national blueprint for change, reform for the whole justice system, overlooked and underrepresented, which was women and girls' experience within the justice system, a national plan of action, which touched on FASD, raising the age, support for family and community programs, and unlock the facts, which was a more economic and cost-benefit analysis. So Amnesty do a lot of joint lobbying and media public campaigning to ensure that we speak out about ensuring that we speak out about Aboriginal-led and designed community-controlled organisations and raising the voices of those leaders. So this is just touching a little bit on some of the research that we've done. So as I said, prior to the campaign launching, we'd done at least 4 years research in various communities across Australia, starting in WA, doing some national work and finishing in Queensland. This type of work is always ongoing with Amnesty as well, and I feel that it is one of our strong suits as an organisation. So we recognise that each community is different. A priority for Amnesty was to ensure that CIE was researched and campaigned and was performed in consultation with Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people throughout the course. Our research in these communities illustrates that Aboriginal people have the solutions for these issues. All around, there are many positive programs led by Indigenous people for Indigenous people that are proven to work. But as everybody in this room knows, and what we've spoken about over the last 2 days, they are struggling to get funding and the recognition that they deserve. We need to support and partner with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities and organisations to develop these solutions to prevent the next generation being lost behind bars. In 2017, we developed an 8-point plan of action. So this was a little bit much to try and campaign about for our volunteer activists. So when you're approaching someone at a market stall, we needed something a little bit kind of quicker as well. So we have minimised that 8-point plan to focus on only 2 goals this year. So the first being invest in Indigenous-led and culturally appropriate prevention and diversionary programs. So a great example of this, and I'm going to show a video in a minute if we can get it to work. That would be my fault. Is the Red Dust Healing Program that's based up in Townsville. So Red Dust works in detention centres and schools to deliver cultural healing programs for children that are at risk of being in contact or coming into contact with the justice system. It focuses on dealing with rejection and positive role models. This program has an 8 out of 10 to 10 out of 10 success rate of no reoffenders within the research period, which is absolutely phenomenal. And for a fraction of the cost, I've heard some different figures spoken about over the last 2 days, but one I first started working with was that it can cost up to $400,000 a year to detain 1 child. So for a fraction of that cost, we can invest in programs that we know work and try and stop that revolving door. It's a very sad old adage, but it's very true. 1 night in juvie can result in a lifetime in and out of detention. Okay. So this little snippet that I'm going to play here, it's got some red dust in it as well, so keep an eye out for that.
I suppose when you look at our program, if we could save a life of 1 child, that's a generation.
At the end of the day, we're all human beings, and I think that we need to all pull together in a community where, because this is what's going on today, it affects everyone in the community. They have been, for years and generations, we're right and we're moving like. Well, what's happening in the community today, in all communities, whether remote or in cities and that, it affects everyone in the community.
They may know the history, but have never felt the history. Whereas today, many of our people, now that are running programs, that's what inspires them to run the programs. And that's why it's important that we use that same feeling and experience to help our next generation.
Better work years and things like that. And then to do more things a bit more free, innit?
Culture is about knowing where you come from. So if you know where you come from, that's the part of your makeup of your identity. The problem that we're having today is many of our young people don't have that opportunity to experience the culture or identity, and therefore, many of them are looking for identity, but don't know where to look for. So we always say as a part of culture and identity is that if you do not know where you come from, then how are you supposed to know where you are going?
Our kids should be shining. They should be walking with their heads high.
So those are just some of the examples of programs that we've found to have been really successful, and all of those are also found in our research documents as well. So the second goal that Amnesty prioritised this year was raising the age of kids being sent to prison to at least 14 years. So children arrested before the age of 14 are 3 times more likely to commit offences as adults than children arrested after the age of 14. So we know at the moment that the NT hasn't yet passed legislation to raise the age of criminality, but in spite of the medium age of criminal responsibility across an international scope being around 14 years old, I'm getting the impression that they're probably only going to raise it to 12, which is, of course, a little bit better, but definitely still not great. So because they haven't yet released that, in Queensland, we're going to try and pave the way and set a bit of a benchmark. so that other states can also push for the age to be raised to at least 14. Cool. This one I just quickly wanted to share. I wanted to finish on a bit of a light note. So as I think, I'm not sure actually if you guys are aware, but the majority of what we do is all volunteer based. So this is like people that predominantly have full-time jobs and that do what they can outside of that to volunteer for Amnesty. So that makes up that 220 groups that I spoke about across Australia, and each of those groups averages at least 10 people. In addition to that, we've got a lot of volunteers that are available just for helping out at things like NAIDOC Week and stuff like that. So a few of the campaign successes we saw last year. Finally, 17-year-olds are no longer being held in adult prisons. The Gold Coast and Toowoomba group developed very strong networks with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisations and groups within their communities, which we hope has created some solidarity and will then be able to continue on after the campaign stops to be a priority. So the Gold Coast group, which is the group that I convene, also met with our MP. So that took multiple letters and phone calls to eventually get that meeting. Stephen Shobo's the state MP there. He was very liberal and has a very tough on crime rhetoric. In fact, if you go to his Wikipedia page, I think it says something along the lines of criminal responsibilities like the Tasmania tiger. It's died out. People need to stand up and take responsibility for their actions. So I went into this meeting not expecting much and actually expecting a lot of pushback, but it was surprisingly successful. Successful in the sense that he agreed with everything that was happening with Community is Everything that's going on in broader communities across Australia. He recognised that the age of criminality criminal responsibility should most definitely be raised, and he also believes in Indigenous-led solutions for Indigenous people, and he gave me an example of some of the diversionary programs that he himself had visited. He did then kind of palm it off to Nigel Scullion, but he made a promise to attend our community forum, which he did. So last year we held a community forum on the Gold Coast around Indigenous youth justice. So we had 50 people attend, and I know with a number this large in this room that might not seem like much, but on the Gold Coast I'm not sure if it's apathy or the good sun and surf and people just don't want to attend events, but I could spend a year working on an event and only get 12 people there. So that was a really big success. We had 2 Aboriginal speakers, 2 non-Aboriginal speakers. We had Aboriginal elders come down all the way from Brisbane that were there. There was a lot of trauma in the room, but there was also a lot of positivity. And after that, I asked specifically the Aboriginal elders that were there, because there was that trauma shown, and they all felt that it was a very successful meeting and that they were heard and that they felt like it was a safe space to voice those opinions. So those are some strong relationships that we've forged now. And as I said, with Amnesty and external of Amnesty, my work on the Gold Coast isn't going to stop there. Our Victorian group met with one of their MPs and spoke about Indigenous youth justice and Community is Everything. And the next week that MP went to Parliament and took that to Parliament, raised it and said, this is a national crisis and we do need a national plan of action. And at least 30 of our groups across the country have met with members of Parliament to discuss this. Some have been successful, some haven't been, but it goes to show what that mass movement of lobbying can do, and how Amnesty can kind of help to help be a spokesperson as well, and to work alongside Indigenous people to come up with good solutions for them that work for their kids. We just got, this is just from the community forum, so we ended up with the regional manager from the Office of Prime Minister and Cabinet there, and also the federal representative from Stephen Shobo's office. So that was a massive win. He did promise me those things. I wasn't sure he was going to deliver. We've had a little bit of radio success as well, just having various interviews where we're able to talk about the issues that are going on and Indigenous-led solutions and diversionary programs. And here we've just got another few. We've got Rodney Dillon, who's talking to some elders there in the community, doing some research for one of our campaigns. And down the bottom right there, our Sydney group finally managed to get a meeting with Malcolm Turnbull to discuss Indigenous youth justice and the campaign as well. So not that we've seen a great deal of action in that department, but at least we've had a step in the right direction. So I will finish on that note. If anybody in the room, organisation or other, does need volunteers, we do have at least 10 of us based on the Gold Coast that are happy to do things external to Amnesty as well. So we're all very committed to that, from Hope Island down to Burleigh. So if you need assistance with any kind of events, please let me know, and we'll be happy to see who we've got available to help out. Cool. Massive thanks to all of my speakers and to Beck and to Meg. Thank you.